Jungle. Hell. The reality of Vietnam. Hey, everyone, welcome back. Before we dive into tonight's topic, go ahead and hit that like button if you're enjoying the content, and subscribe if you haven't already. Drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Now, get comfortable, or maybe don't, because what we're about to discuss isn't comfortable at all. Tonight, we're talking about Vietnam. Not the sanitized Hollywood version. Not the version politicians want you to remember. The real version. The version that killed over 58,000 Americans and millions of Vietnamese. The version that broke an entire generation and changed warfare forever. Part 1. The draft. Congratulations. It's 1967 and you just turned 18. You're thinking about college maybe, or maybe you're working at your dad's garage. Maybe you've got a girlfriend who you're planning to marry after you save up enough money. You've got plans. You've got a future. And then the letter arrives. It's from the United States Selective Service System. The envelope is thin, official looking, and everyone in your neighborhood knows exactly what it means. Your mother's hands are shaking as she hands it to you. Your father won't make eye contact. Your younger sister is crying, even though she doesn't fully understand why. You open it. Greetings, it says. That's how it starts. Greetings. Like you've been invited to a birthday party instead of a war. You've been drafted. You have 30 days to report for induction. 30 days before your life as you know it ends. You can't refuse. Well, you can, but refusal means prison. 5 years in federal prison for draft evasion. Some guys flee to Canada. Tens of thousands of them. They cross the border and don't come back. Living as exiles. Unable to see their families. Unable to come home even for funerals. Some guys get deferments. College deferments if they can afford to stay in school. Medical deferments if they can find a sympathetic doctor. Religious deferments if they belong to the right churches. But if you're poor, if you're working class, if you're black or Latino, your chances of getting a deferment are basically zero. The draft isn't equal. It never was, so you report. You go to the induction center. You're stripped down, examined like livestock. They check your teeth, your eyes, your reflexes. They make you pee in a cup. They ask you questions about your medical history, your family history, your mental health. If you admit anything that might get you disqualified, they'll dig deeper. Asthma? Prove it. Bad knees? Show us the x-rays. Anxiety? Depression? They don't care. Unless you're actively psychotic, you're going. You pass. Of course you pass. Almost everyone passes. And just like that, you belong to the United States Army. You're given a crew cut so short you can see your scalp. You're issued uniforms that don't quite fit. You're assigned a serial number. From now on, you're not a person. You're a body, a unit, a resource to be deployed. Basic training is 8 weeks of hell designed to break you down and rebuild you as a soldier. You wake up at 5 a.m. You run. You do push-ups until your arms give out. You crawl through mud under barbed wire while drill instructors scream in your face. You learn to field strip an M16 rifle blindfolded. You learn to throw grenades. You learn to stick a bayonet into a dummy that's supposed to represent the enemy. And you're supposed to yell "kill" while you do it. Because the army wants to make sure you're psychologically prepared to take a human life. And then you're told where you're going. Vietnam. The rumor mill has been churning since you arrived. Everyone's heard stories about the heat, about the jungle, about the Viet Cong, about guys who went over and never came back, or came back in body bags, or came back missing limbs, or came back with their minds shattered into pieces that would never fit back together. You get 2 weeks of leave before you ship out. You go home. Your family throws a party. Everyone's trying to act normal, but there's this tension in the air, this unspoken knowledge that this might be the last time you're all together. Your girlfriend cries. Your mother can't stop hugging you. Your father gives you advice that doesn't mean anything because he fought in World War II. And this war is nothing like that war. And then you're on a plane, a commercial airliner filled with 18 and 19-year-old kids, flying across the Pacific toward a country most of you couldn't find on a map 6 months ago. The flight takes forever. Some guys sleep. Some guys joke around, trying to act tough. Some guys just stare out the window in silence, watching the ocean pass below, knowing that everything is about to change. Part 2. Arrival in country. The plane descends. You're landing at Tan Son Nhut Air Base, just outside Saigon. The moment the door opens, the heat hits you like a physical force. It's not just hot. It's oppressive. It's humid. It's the kind of heat that makes you sweat through your uniform in seconds. The kind of heat that makes breathing feel like work. And the smell. Nobody warned you about the smell. It's a combination of jet fuel, sewage, rotting vegetation, and something else. Something you can't quite identify, but that you'll later recognize as the smell of a country at war. It's the smell of poverty and desperation and death all mixed together. You're herded off the plane and onto buses. The buses have wire mesh over the windows. You ask why. Someone, a guy who's been here before, maybe on his second tour, tells you it's to keep grenades out. Grenades. Welcome to Vietnam. The bus drives through Saigon and it's chaos. Motorcycles everywhere. Street vendors dot crowds of people who don't seem particularly concerned that there's a war happening. Kids running alongside the bus, begging for food or money. Women in conical hats. Old men squatting by the side of the road. It's a different world. It's so far removed from anything you've ever experienced that your brain struggles to process it. You're taken to a base. Maybe it's a large installation with permanent buildings. Maybe it's a fire base. A fortified position out in the boonies surrounded by sandbags and razor wire. Either way, you're assigned to a unit. Maybe it's infantry. Maybe it's artillery. Maybe it's supply. If you're infantry, you've just been handed a death sentence. You just don't know it yet. The first few days are disorienting. Everything is different. The food is different. Sea rations that taste like cardboard and regret. The language is different. You can't understand anything anyone is saying. The climate is different. It rains almost every afternoon. A torrential downpour that turns everything to mud. And then an hour later, it's blazing hot again, and everything's steaming. You meet the guys in your unit. Some of them are friendly. Some of them are hardened, distant, unwilling to get close to the new guy because they've seen too many new guys die. There's a term for you. FNG. Fucking new guy. You don't know anything. You haven't seen anything. You're a liability until you prove otherwise. And then you go on your first patrol. You're handed an M16, a helmet, a flak jacket, and about 60 pounds of gear. You're told to stay alert, stay quiet, and stay alive. You walk out of the firebase and into the jungle, and suddenly everything you learned in training feels inadequate. Part 3. The jungle. The jungle is alive. That's the first thing you notice. It's not like the woods back home. It's dense. It's oppressive. The canopy is so thick that sunlight barely penetrates. Everything is green, 50 shades of green, all of them hostile. The undergrowth is so thick you can barely see 10 feet in front of you. Visibility is almost zero, and it's loud. Insects buzzing. Birds calling. Things moving in the brush that you can't see. Every sound could be the enemy. Every shadow could be a Viet Cong soldier waiting to put a bullet in your head. Your senses are on overdrive. Your heart is pounding. Your hands are sweating so much you can barely hold your rifle. The heat is unbearable. You're wearing a heavy uniform, carrying 60 pounds of gear, and the temperature is pushing 100 degrees with 90% humidity. You're sweating through everything. Your boots are soaked. Your socks are soaked. Every step is misery, and then there are the leeches. They're everywhere. They drop from trees. They crawl out of the water. They attach to your skin and start feeding, and you don't even notice until you look down and see them. Fat, black, bloated with your blood. You have to burn them off with cigarettes. If you just pull them off, their heads stay embedded in your skin and cause infections. Mosquitoes are everywhere. They're not just annoying. They carry malaria. They carry dengue fever. They carry all sorts of tropical diseases that will lay you out for weeks. You take anti-malarial pills, but they don't always work. And the side effects, nausea, nightmares, paranoia, are almost as bad as the disease. You're constantly wet. It rains almost every day. When it's not raining, you're wading through rivers or swamps. Your feet are never dry. Never. You develop immersion foot, a condition where your skin gets so waterlogged it starts to rot. Your toenails fall off. Your feet crack and bleed. Every step is agony, but you keep walking because stopping isn't an option. The patrol moves slowly. You're constantly watching for booby traps, plunger sticks, sharpened bamboo stakes covered in feces designed to cause infection. Tripwires connected to grenades, pressure plate mines. The Viet Cong are masters of booby traps. They don't need to engage you directly. They just need to make every step you take a potential death sentence. And then someone steps on a mine. The explosion is deafening. There's screaming. You run toward the sound and find one of your guys on the ground, his leg, or what's left of it, blown off below the knee. Blood is everywhere. He's screaming. He's in shock. The medic is trying to stabilize him, trying to stop the bleeding. But there's so much blood. You call for a medevac, but it takes time, sometimes too much time. You learn quickly that death in Vietnam is random. It's not heroic. It's not cinematic. It's sudden and stupid and meaningless. A guy can be walking next to you, laughing at a joke, and then he steps on a mine and he's gone. Or a sniper takes him out from a position you never see. Or he gets hit by friendly fire because someone panicked and started shooting at shadows. Part 4. Search and destroy. Your unit is assigned to a search and destroy mission. The objective is simple: find the enemy and kill them. Find their supplies and destroy them. Find their villages and burn them. It's a strategy designed to deny the Viet Cong their support base. But in practice, it means you're walking into villages and terrorizing civilians who may or may not be supporting the enemy. You arrive at a village. It's small, maybe 20 or 30 huts. Women and children and old men. No young men. The young men are either dead, or they're Viet Cong, or they're hiding in the jungle. Your commanding officer orders a search. You go through the huts, looking for weapons, looking for supplies, looking for anything that might indicate Viet Cong presence. You don't find much. Maybe a bag of rice, maybe some medical supplies, maybe nothing. But the order comes down: burn it. So you do. You light the thatched roofs on fire. You watch as the huts go up in flames. You watch as the villagers, mostly women and children, scream and cry and beg you not to destroy their homes. But orders are orders. Sometimes it's worse. Sometimes there are tunnels. The Viet Cong built an extensive network of tunnels, some of them stretching for miles underground, with living quarters, hospitals, and supply depots. When you find a tunnel entrance, someone has to go down and clear it. These guys are called tunnel rats, and they have the worst job in Vietnam. Imagine crawling through a narrow tunnel in complete darkness, armed with just a pistol and a flashlight, knowing that there could be enemy soldiers around every corner, knowing that the tunnel could be booby-trapped, knowing that you could get stuck down there and suffocate or starve. Tunnel rats don't last long. The stress alone is enough to break most people. Sometimes you find the enemy. Sometimes they find you. Firefights in the jungle are chaos. You can't see more than a few feet. You're shooting at muzzle flashes. You're shooting at sounds. You don't know if you're hitting anything. The Viet Cong use guerrilla tactics. They hit you hard and fast, then melt back into the jungle before you can respond. You lose guys. You lose a lot of guys. The casualty rates are staggering. Some units lose 50% or more of their men within a few months. The replacements come in, young and scared, just like you were, and they die too. It becomes a cycle, a meat grinder that chews up young men and spits out corpses. And the thing is, you're not even sure what you're fighting for. Back home, the news is saying you're fighting communism, fighting to protect democracy, fighting to stop the domino effect. But here, in the jungle, covered in mud and blood and bug bites, it doesn't feel like you're protecting anything. It feels like you're just trying to survive another day. The Viet Cong are everywhere and nowhere. They don't wear uniforms. They blend in with the civilian population. That old man working in the rice paddy, he might be Viet Cong. That kid selling coke by the side of the road, he might be passing information to the enemy. You can't trust anyone. And that mistrust eats away at you. It makes you paranoid. It makes you see enemies everywhere. Part 5. The psychological toll. Let's talk about what war does to your mind. You're 19 years old. A year ago you were in high school. Now you've killed people. Maybe you don't know how many. Maybe you've lost count. But you've taken human lives. And that's not something you can just shrug off. At first, you tell yourself it's justified. They were shooting at you. They were the enemy. It was kill or be killed. And that's all true. But it doesn't make it easier. You see their faces in your dreams. You hear their voices. You wonder if they had families. You wonder if their mothers say crying for them the same way your mother would cry if you died. The stress is constant. You're always on edge, always waiting for the next ambush, the next mortar attack, the next booby trap. You can't relax. You can't let your guard down. Sleep is difficult. When you do sleep, you have nightmares. You wake up in a cold sweat, reaching for your rifle, convinced you're under attack. Some guys turn to drugs. Marijuana is everywhere. Heroin is cheap and plentiful. The army knows it's a problem, but they can't stop it. Guys use drugs to cope, to escape, to feel something other than fear and exhaustion. Some guys get hooked. They come home addicts, unable to function, unable to hold jobs, unable to reconnect with their families. Some guys just break. They call it combat fatigue or shell shock, or later, post-traumatic stress disorder. But whatever you call it, it's the same thing. Your brain can't handle stress anymore. You've seen too much. You've done too much. And one day you just snap. Some guys become catatonic, staring at nothing, unable to speak. Some guys become violent, lashing out at anyone nearby. Some guys eat their own guns. The worst part is the moral injury. That's a term that didn't exist during Vietnam. but it describes what happens when you're forced to do things that violate your core values. Maybe you shot a kid who was carrying a grenade. Maybe you burned a village full of innocent people. Maybe you stood by while someone in your unit did something unspeakable. These aren't hypotheticals. These things happened, and you have to live with them. There's a massacre that everyone knows about. My Lai, March 16th, 1968. American soldiers entered a village, and over the course of several hours, killed between 350 and 500 unarmed civilians. Old men, women, children, babies. They were herded into ditches and shot. Some women were raped before being killed. It's one of the most horrific war crimes in American history. The soldiers who participated in My Lai weren't monsters. They were ordinary guys, just like you, but they'd been in country for months. They'd lost friends to booby traps and snipers. They'd been told that everyone in the village was Viet Cong or Viet Cong sympathizers, and their commanding officers either ordered the massacre or did nothing to stop it. So they killed and killed and killed. Only one man was convicted, Lieutenant William Calley. He served 3.5 years under house arrest, 3.5 years for orchestrating the murder of hundreds of civilians. Most Americans didn't want to believe it happened. They wanted to believe their soldiers were heroes, not war criminals. But it did happen. And My Lai wasn't an isolated incident. It was just the one that got publicity. Part 6. The Rotation. Homelets say you survive. You've done your 365 days. You're going home. You should be excited, right? You should be celebrating. But you're not. You're numb. You're empty. You've lost friends. You've seen things you can't unsee. You've done things you can't undo. And now you're supposed to go back to the world and act like everything is normal. You board a plane. Within 24 hours, you go from the jungle to the suburbs, from combat to your parents' living room. There's no decompression. There's no transition period. One day you're in a firefight, and 2 days later you're expected to have dinner with your family and talk about your plans for the future. But you don't have plans. You don't have a future. You can't think past tomorrow. You can't sleep without nightmares. You can't handle loud noises, fireworks, cars backfiring. Anything that sounds like gunfire sends you diving for cover. You can't handle crowds. You can't handle being touched. Your girlfriend tries to hug you and you flinch. Your family doesn't understand. They ask you questions. What was it like? Did you kill anyone? Were you scared? And you can't answer. How do you explain what it was like? How do you describe the smell of burning flesh? How do you talk about watching your best friend bleed out in your arms? You can't, so you don't. You shut down. You isolate. And then there's the reception you get from the public. You expected parades. You expected gratitude. You expected to be welcomed home as a hero. Instead, you're spat on. Literally. People call you baby killer. They throw things at you. Protesters show up at airports and bus stations, screaming at returning soldiers, calling them murderers and war criminals. The anti-war movement is in full swing. College students who avoided the draft through deferments are now lecturing you about the immorality of the war. Rich kids who will never see combat are calling you a fascist. And you can't even defend yourself because part of you agrees with them. You don't know why you were in Vietnam either. You don't know what you're fighting for. You just know you did what you were told and somehow survived. You try to get a job, but you have no skills. The army taught you how to kill people and break things, but that doesn't translate to the civilian job market. You go to interviews and they ask what you've been doing for the past year. And when you say Vietnam, you can see their faces change. They don't want to hire you. You're damaged goods. You're unstable. You're a liability. Some guys adjust. They find jobs. They start families. They push the memories down and try to build normal lives. But for many others, the war never ends. They drift. They become homeless. They self-medicate with alcohol and drugs. They end up in prison. They kill themselves. The suicide rate among Vietnam veterans is staggering. Estimates suggest that more veterans have died by suicide since the war than were killed during it. Part 7. The Vietnamese experience. But let's step back from the American experience for a moment. Let's talk about the Vietnamese. Because while 58,000 Americans died, over 2 million Vietnamese died. Soldiers and civilians. North and South. Men, women and children. Imagine you're a Vietnamese civilian. Your village has been caught in the middle of this war for years. The Americans come through during the day, looking for Viet Cong. The Viet Cong come through at night, demanding food and supplies. You can't say no to either side because saying no to one means the other will kill you. Your children are hungry. The rice paddies have been destroyed by bombing. The water buffalo you relied on for farming was killed in a firefight. Your home, which your family has lived in for generations, has been burned down 3 times. You've rebuilt it 3 times. But you're running out of materials. You're running out of hope. You've lost family members. Your father was killed by American soldiers who thought he was Viet Cong. Your brother was conscripted by the South Vietnamese army and hasn't been heard from in 2 years. Your sister was killed when a bomb, you don't even know whose bomb, landed on the market where she was buying vegetables. The Americans dropped leaflets from planes telling you to evacuate to refugee camps. But the camps are overcrowded, filthy, dangerous. Disease runs rampant. There's not enough food, there's no privacy, there's no dignity, so you stay in your village, or what's left of it, and you pray that tomorrow won't be the day a bomb or a bullet finds you. And then there's Agent Orange. The Americans spray it from planes to kill the jungle, to eliminate cover for the Viet Cong. It's a defoliant, a chemical weapon that strips leaves from trees and kills vegetation. But it also kills people, slowly. It causes cancer. It causes birth defects that won't show up for years, sometimes generations. Vietnamese children are still being born with deformities caused by Agent Orange exposure decades after the war ended. The war finally ends in 1975. The Americans leave. Saigon falls. The North Vietnamese take control. And you think maybe finally things will get better. But they don't. The country is devastated. The economy is destroyed. Millions are dead. Infrastructure is in ruins. And then new government is authoritarian and brutal. Some people flee. The boat people, refugees who escaped Vietnam by boat, risking pirates, storms, and starvation for a chance at freedom. Many didn't make it. They drowned, they were killed by pirates. They died of dehydration in the South China Sea. But some survived and made it to refugee camps in Thailand, Malaysia, Hong Kong, and eventually some made it to America, Australia, France, anywhere that would take them. Epilogue. The legacy Vietnam changed America. It changed how Americans viewed their government. The Pentagon Papers, leaked documents that revealed the government had been lying about the war for years, shattered public trust. Watergate came shortly after, cementing the idea that the government couldn't be trusted. It changed how Americans viewed war. The draft ended. The all-volunteer military began. Wars became something that happened over there, fought by a small professional military, not by drafted civilians. The public could ignore them. They could pretend they weren't happening. It changed how Americans treated veterans. After the disastrous reception Vietnam vets received, there was a conscious effort to separate the warrior from the war. Support our troops became a mantra, even when people opposed the wars those troops were fighting. But most of all, Vietnam left scars. On the veterans who fought there, on the families' holeless sons and daughters, on the Vietnamese people who endured decades of war and occupation, on the American psyche. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. lists 58,320 names. Each one represents a person, a son, a brother, a father, a friend, someone who had plans, who had dreams, who had a future that was cut short. And that's just the Americans. The Vietnamese losses dwarf that number. Was it worth it? That's the question everyone asks. And the answer, honestly, is no. Vietnam didn't fall to communism because of American withdrawal. It fell because the war was unwinnable from the start. The domino theory proved false. The other Southeast Asian nations didn't fall. The sacrifice was for nothing. But try telling that to a Gold Star mother who lost her son. Try telling that to a veteran who lost his legs. Try telling that to a Vietnamese refugee who lost everything. The war may have been pointless, but the suffering was real. So when you think about Vietnam, don't think about Rambo or Apocalypse Now or Platoon. Think about the real people who lived through it. Think about the 19-year-old kids how were drafted against their will and sent to fight in a jungle on the other side of the world. Think about the Vietnamese families caught in the crossfire. Think about the cost, not just in dollars or territory, but in human lives and human suffering. And remember that war, any war, is never the glorious adventure that recruiters promise. It's young men dying in mud. It's civilians caught in the crossfire. It's psychological trauma that lasts generations. It's all the potential and promise of human life snuffed out for political objectives that often prove meaningless. Thanks for sticking with me through this. I know it was heavy, but these stories need to be told, not to glorify war, but to remember its true cost. Hit that subscribe button if you want more content like this. And as always, let me know in the comments what you think. Stay safe out there.